Hello, District 21 members. Welcome to tonight's Webinar Wednesday. And tonight we are tackling Level 1 of the Pathways program. We are privileged and honored to have Kristin Nickells as our guide, our tour guide through Level 1. Kristin Nickells is a distinguished Toastmaster, a past Division C Director. She was the amazing co-chair of the phenomenal 2016 Fall Conference. She's a member of Arbutus Toastmasters and Mid-Island Advance, and actually that club got to test drive Pathways before it was refined and released to the world. Kristin is one of our Pathways guides. She's been an early adopter. She's been scouring the program for nuggets and gems that she can now share with us. Even if you've done Level 1, you will get so much out of her presentation that you'll be able to pass on to club members. Please welcome Kristin Nickells. Yay.
Thank you so much, Carol. I am absolutely thrilled to have been asked to do this webinar. I should tell you all that I am actually away. Right now I'm on the road, and so there may be some challenges with technical things, and to add to that, I happen to be in the Midwest of the United States and in the middle of an electrical storm. So it's quite exciting. If you hear thunder, that's what it is, and we'll just do our best. So if you lose me, it's because of the weather. Anyway, let's carry on here. There are some objectives tonight, and the whole reason that I was really excited to do this webinar was because as I have worked my own way through the early parts of Pathways, I have come to understand that, first of all, it's easier than it seems. And secondly, there are a few assumptions floating around out there that I would like to dispel. I'd like to clear a couple of things up there and maybe give you a few insights. And at the end, I've just had a news flash actually from World Headquarters about what's coming. And so I'm going to share that with you tonight, and you'll be the first to know which paths are coming. So our job tonight is to look at some of the real treasures that are inside the early stages of Pathways, and to enlighten you on some of the design elements that make Pathways, are going to make Pathways easier for you to jump in. So the first thing that I would like to say is that I have been thinking a lot back to the early days of when I was a brand new Toastmaster, as Carol says, a brand new baby Toastmaster. And I can recall that it took me a long time to figure out how all the manuals worked. It took me a long time to figure out what the first 10 speeches were really all about in my CC, and also that there were two tracks that operated simultaneously, a leadership track and a communication track. It wasn't explained to me, and I am a notorious button pusher. I like to push buttons and pull levers before I read the manual. And I did not read my CC manual. Perhaps if I had, I wouldn't have been so confused. What I have found is that once I've delved into Pathways and started to look for the patterns and the system, it is a lot more straightforward than you might think. In fact, I'm going to put my head out on a limb here and say that it actually is more straightforward than the current legacy program. If you think about how you get to DTM, how you work your way through the paths. And so let's start with following what the patterns are. So Carol, if you can give me my second slide. One thing I didn't ask you is how I advance to the next slide.
Yeah, just down at the bottom.
Perfect. Okay. So let's just look at this infographic here. And you will be able to see some really interesting patterns. Now, the way our brains work is once we understand the patterns and the repeating patterns, it makes our path a lot easier to follow. So here are some things about pathways. Every single path follows a pattern. And this is the pattern. There are 5 levels in every path, 5 levels. In every path, level 1 is all about mastering fundamentals. In level 2, you delve into learning what your style is in whatever the competencies are that your path is teaching you. In level 3, we build on what we've already done in level 1 and 2, and we increase our knowledge. So it's all about going that one little level deeper, peeling off those layers of the onion skin, and increasing the knowledge that we have regarding the competencies that we are learning in that path. In level 4, we build on those skills again. And this follows what Toastmasters has been doing all along. We start with fundamentals and we build on them. That's what the CC manual does. It starts with the basic fundamentals, and then it teaches the structure of a speech, etc., 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 so that we build. If we do the CC manual in order of competencies, we are building one upon the other. Had I known that, I would not have done my first CC by jumping all over the place. That's what I did. The second time I did a CC, I did it in order, and it was a completely different experience. In level 5, we are now asked to actually demonstrate our expertise. So it doesn't matter which of the paths you have chosen, you will follow this same pattern with the same 5 levels and the same theme to each level all the way through your path. Okay, so that's one important pattern. The other one is this. There are 14 projects in total in every path, and they are scattered among the different levels. If you notice, I have actually listed the projects in each of the levels, and you'll see a diamond beside every project. In every single path, there are 10 required projects. In every single path, there are 4 electives. So there's a total of 14 projects in every path. Now, if you go through and you count all the black and the red diamonds within those colored boxes, you will count 14. You'll see that in level 1, there are 3. The first project is the Icebreaker. The second project in every path, the second project of level 1 is that you give a speech, you get it evaluated, you take the feedback that you received in your evaluation, and you give that speech again. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly the same speech. It could be a different one, but your job is to incorporate your feedback into the second speech. So you are actually applying what your evaluator suggested for you. And then you try your hand at being an evaluator. In every path, level 1, project 2 includes that format. Speech, evaluate, speech, and then be an evaluator. In every level 1 of every path, project number 3 is to give a speech on something that you've had to research, something that you are not familiar with, something that you have a little bit of knowledge about, but you need to know more. So you are asked to give a speech on something that you've had to research. Every single level 1 of every path follows this format. So Depending on what your competencies are in the path that you want to learn, you can tailor the topic of your speech, etc., to what you want to do with those 3 competencies. And what I really love about this is that if you think about being a brand new baby Toastmaster, you're giving your icebreaker speech, and then you're actually doing your icebreaker project. And there's a difference, and I'll get into that. But you do that first project, then you are learning about giving a speech and getting it evaluated and applying what you have learned from your evaluation. You actually have to do it. It's an actionable item where you actually have to take your evaluation and say, okay, my evaluator suggested this and this and this. I can make this speech better by incorporating those suggestions, and you give it again. And you get it evaluated again. And then you try your hand at evaluating. And there's a whole process within that second project. There's a whole series of videos and information about what makes a good evaluation. This is really meaty stuff for Toastmasters. If we think about the current program right now, what we do is we're assigned being an evaluator. We may have a mentor who can help us. We may not. We may ask a few questions about being an evaluator. We may not. And so when we try our hand at evaluating the first time, usually it's without any training. We've listened to some evaluations in our early club meetings, and without any real knowledge, we go into the world of evaluating. Well, that's no more. We actually get some training, some proven, really good quality training through video and information about how to evaluate, and then we actually do it. Now, here's another pattern. Every single of the 14 projects within Pathways requires you to do 2 things. At the very beginning of your project, you are asked to assess yourself. It's a little questionnaire, usually about 4 or 5 questions, and they have to do with your skill level, your confidence, your self-assessment of your own ability regarding these competencies. So, for instance, as you'll see when we actually go online here, within the Icebreaker, the self-assessment asks questions like, how confident are you getting up and speaking in front of people? How much experience, or how would you rate your level of experience in speaking? Those kinds of questions. And you're asked to assess yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. So you assess yourself before your project, and this is for your eyes only. Nobody has to see this assessment, so you can be really, really honest. And rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 on the questions at the beginning of your project. And then at the end of your project, once you've done the work, the same rate yourself assessment comes up, and you rate yourself after. Same questions, same scale of 1 to 5. And once you have completed that and submitted it, which means that you've just registered it, or you've just pressed submit, then you get a little pop-up that shows you the before and the after scores, how you rated yourself, and gives you a really clear measure of whether you feel you have gained the competencies that project is trying to teach you. So you cannot complete the project until you have done those 2 things: the assess at the beginning done the work, of course, and then assess at the end. And I love this. As a coach, I love this because, first of all, what gets measured can improve. And when we are honest with ourselves and we are looking at what the real core competencies are that we're trying to grasp, attain, and develop within ourselves, when we rate ourselves before and then we rate ourselves after, we might be surprised at just how much that particular project has taught us. So I think probably just because of the time and we want to have lots of time to go exploring, I think that it might be, oh, I love those little happy faces. I love that. Okay, before we go exploring, I just want to talk a little bit about the Icebreaker project. Now, if you think about the legacy program right now, what happens with the Icebreaker is when we first become Toastmasters, we're handed a manual called A Confident Communicator, and the very first project is the Icebreaker. Maybe we have a mentor who explains to us that this is really just about getting up and speaking in front of the room, and the objective really is to allow your club members to get to know you. Thanks, Carol. Okay. And so we get up and we do our Icebreaker, and we all know that there are various levels of competency when it comes to giving an Icebreaker. At that point in the game, brand new Toastmasters don't really understand too much about, haven't sort of trained themselves to stick to a time. There's really no knowledge about structure. There's very little guidance about how to actually put that speech together and deliver it so that the experience is meaningful. That's all changed because the Icebreaker has now become a little training project. And it not only is training the brand new baby Toastmaster to how to do their first speech, how to craft and deliver their first speech, it also is a learning environment, a learning project for all of us, experienced or not, in the navigation of pathways, the design of pathways, how the windows work, how you can move around within a project. It's got all kinds of information in it that isn't in all the other projects, because Toastmasters figures that by the time we've moved up and down and sideways through the Icebreaker project, we'll have a pretty good idea of how to move around within other projects. So breezing through your Icebreaker isn't a good idea. Now, the good news is that when we finish a project, and the Icebreaker is included in this, when we finish a project and it is complete, we can go back in and revisit it and go exploring through our work for life. That history, that particular project, is part of our permanent record within our personal base camp. And we can go back in and revisit all of the educational information, all the videos, all of the task lists, everything that is included in that particular project, we can revisit. So it's just like flipping around through the manuals. Now, because the Icebreaker project is loaded with learning material regarding all of the pathways projects, navigation learning material, etc., because it is loaded, the design of Pathways was designed specifically so that we have to do our Icebreaker before we can see anything else. Okay, and that's an assumption that has been kind of been blown out of proportion with Pathways, because, and I admit to feeling this myself, I wanted to be able to go exploring. I wanted to be able to run ahead and see how I could maybe fit a speech into what time I had available, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to see what this whole Pathways thing was about. And I couldn't go anywhere because I hadn't finished my icebreaker.
Right.
Well, the good news is that because the icebreaker is loaded with navigational instruction, Toastmasters International wants you to work your way through the icebreaker methodically and slowly and thoroughly first. Then, once you finished your icebreaker, and you'll see, if we can go and log into my Basecamp, you'll see I've finished my icebreaker. Now the other two projects within level 1 are both open to me. And I can go and do them in whichever order I choose. I can look at what's involved in the project. I can pick and choose my speeches, my tasks. I can move around at free will. The icebreaker and level 1 is the only one that blocks further work until you have finished it. And there's a reason for it, and that's because it's so packed. So let's go exploring within the Icebreaker project and see if we can actually get somewhere. Okay, so Carol, you have to walk me through this again. So I have to share my screen,
Share your
right?
screen. Yeah.
Okay. There's content playing. So I say yes.
There you go.
And I want to share my screen. So then I click on that.
And it is loading.
All right. Okay, you're now sharing your entire screen. Okay, now I want to go online. Where do I go?
So now you just go to whatever navigator window that you've got that you actually want us to be seeing, because we're seeing what you're seeing right now. So just go exactly where you want to go.
Okay.
Perfect. Great.
Too easy. Too easy.
So all of you that are watching this, you too could be one of our guest speakers on a Webinar Wednesday, and you could be having as much fun as Kristin. Just going to plant that little seed, little shameless plug. Oh, hey!
Okay.
What's with that thumbs down? Come on.
All right, so can everybody see that we are now logged into Toastmasters International?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so we know that to get into our Basecamp, we go to the Pathways tab. Oh, didn't I log in already?
Yep, you did, but okay.
Okay, all right, we go to the Pathways tab. And we go to access my path through Basecamp or go to Basecamp. Both of them will get you exactly the same place. Okay, now this is a typical screen for a laptop or a PC or anything that's not mobile. The environment looks a little bit different. It's a responsive website, so it looks a little bit different if you're accessing it on your phone or your iPad. This is the normal view. So I'm going to log in as an Arbutus Toastmasters member. You will see that if you are a member of more than one club, I can actually log in as an Arbutus Toastmasters member, a Mid-Island member, or Pathways Guide, which gives me access to some extra stuff. Okay, so I'm going to log in as an Arbutus Toastmasters member. I have done that. Okay. All right. So we are going to go to my education transcript. And you will see that, just ignore all of the Pathways Guide things that are happening there. You will see that the path that I have chosen is dynamic leadership. And I'm going to go ahead and open my curriculum. All right. Now, there's a couple of good things on this screen here. One of them is this percentage here. This is the percentage of the entire level. So that I've done 5% of level 1 right now. You'll see that here in level 1, I have done, 5% of my path, 25% of level 1. And you'll see the status here of level 1 of my icebreaker is that I have completed my icebreaker. And the status of the other 2 projects, remember we talked about there are 3 projects in level 1, the icebreaker, evaluation and feedback, and then research and presenting. So the other 2 projects in my path, evaluation, feedback, and research and planning, say in progress because I'm working on those. I haven't completed anything yet. But you'll notice that when you first download your path and you will see this launch button that comes up with your icebreaker, there will be no buttons here for the same reason that we talked about earlier, that the design of Pathways is that you carefully work your way through the icebreaker because it's so loaded with good stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and launch the icebreaker. Now I have opened this in Chrome and I'm just a little, I'm a little concerned about my pop-up blocker. I think I unpopped it in Internet Explorer, so I may have to log out and log back in, but never mind.
Right. Well, okay, then we'll get to see how you unblock the pop-up blocker, which is a thing.
Okay, now I'm just going to make that window bigger, and I am going to show you this select to move to another section. This is a really important part of any project that you open up, because you'll see that this is the content of this project. This whole list here is the content of the project. Now, I happen to be right down at the very end of it, but if I go to navigation, it takes me right back to the first screen. Now, when you first open up your icebreaker, it's going to look like this. Okay? It's going to look like this. And where a lot of people are getting stuck is they're clicking on this arrow and they're saying, I can't go anywhere. I'm so frustrated, it's not working. Uh-huh. Here's what I want to tell you all, and please pass this on. This is a photograph. This is not the actual navigation screen. This is a photograph that tells you how to navigate. It's only a photograph. So if you make that window bigger, you will see that all of a sudden the actual real navigation arrow appears. So please make the window bigger, because clicking on the photograph will get you nowhere. So what this is telling you, it says review this screen to learn how to navigate each project. You'll see that this this arrow, which is in fact the real one, is here. The arrow on the left-hand side of your screen returns you to the previous page. The arrow on the right-hand side of your screen advances you to the next page. Now, some screens, there's some information in here that is not video, it's actually slides. And when you see this little pane here, it means that there are slides and there's information. So if you click back and next, you are flipping through a slideshow, and learning how to evaluate is one of them. There is a video, but then there's also a slideshow with information on it. And so if you go here, you're actually going to the next piece of the project. If you go here, it is flipping you through the slideshow. And the other thing is that this little pane right here, directions, this will appear on some screens. Now, it's not going to do anything for me right now because it's a picture. This is a photograph. So when you do see this directions screen and you click on it, it gives you some advice about how to move around within the pane or the window that you are in. Again, this select to move to another section will always appear, and you can jump around. You'll see that we're on navigation right now, so we're right here. If I click here, I'm going to introduction, and you'll see that's the second piece right here. I could have gone it.
Oh, oops. Are you there?
The screen's frozen.
Oh, yeah, it's saying please stand by. But yes, we saw that. You can keep talking while it...
Okay. All right. So now we have an introduction, and it tells you a little bit about the Icebreaker. It is, again, for those of us who are experienced, you know, I've done 10 CCs, and my Icebreaker was completely different every time. And I looked for creative ways to do the Icebreaker 10 different times. It's worthwhile going back and doing this whole Icebreaker and working your way slowly through this project. Okay, so the next one is it talks about why an Icebreaker, why we are doing an Icebreaker, why it's an important part of your learning experience. Then it tells you about your assignment. Now, your assignment pane is really, really important, and I want you to pay really close attention to this. It tells you the purpose of what you're being asked to do, and it gives you a brief overview. But here's where it really gets juicy. See this little project checklist? One of the comments that I've received most often is, I don't know what's being asked of me. I don't know how many speeches I'm supposed to do in a project. I don't know what the project looks like. Nobody's telling me, and the program isn't telling me what I have to do. Well, in fact, it is, because this project checklist is gold. If you click on the project checklist, it will load a document, which you can print if you want to, that tells you step by step by step by step what your project includes. Now, in the Icebreaker, it's pretty straightforward. You schedule your speech, you write your speech, you rehearse your speech, and then you finish the after assessment. The project checklist is where you're going to find out what's involved in your project. When you get into the second one, which is give a speech, have it evaluated, give it again, and then be an evaluator, the project checklist is richer. There's more tasks in it. And you actually can check off, for those of us that love to check the boxes. I'm one of those people that makes to-do lists. And if I do something that's not on the list, I add it to the list so I can check it off. And I love this project checklist because this is where I found out what's involved in project 2 and what's involved in project 3. The overview gives me just that, an overview, but it does not tell me exactly what's involved. So this project checklist, absolute gold. Oops. Sorry, I went too far back there.
That's the other thing. I've noticed that Pathways is unbreakable, so you can press buttons. It won't let you do anything that you're not supposed to.
No, it absolutely doesn't. And what's really nice is that there are always a number of ways to get wherever you want. This looks like a really benign little logo up here. It's not. It always takes you to your home page. If you ever get stuck, click on the logo and it will always take you back to the beginning. Okay.
Nice.
So
Jim Taylor made a note. I'll just share. This is a good walkthrough for people that may have been distracted or rushing and missed all the goodies. So thank you for that.
Well, I was one of them. Now I'm having some trouble getting launched again, and I'm not quite sure why.
Oh, it might be a screen that's in the background.
I don't think so.
Okay. While you're figuring that out, Sujata says, very good demo, Kristin.
Oh, good. Okay, I may have to log out and then log in again.
Okay. And we'll just say hi to all these people that are on the call. I see Barb Westlake and Kathy Savage, Earl, and Druziak. Did I say that right? I hope I did. Pat Nelson is here.
Oh, those are all familiar names and faces to me. Okay, I think we're back in business again. So you remember where we were?
Mm-hmm.
We were on your assignment. So I could flip through here. It's taken me right back to where I was. And that's another little interesting tidbit, another little quick pearl is that Pathways is designed so that when you're working on a project and you've only got so much time to work on it, you log off Pathways, you log off Toastmasters International, and then when you reopen it, it will take you exactly back to the spot that you left. So you don't have to start at the very beginning all over again. Within your project, once you launch your project, it will take you right back to where you left off. Okay? So remember, project checklist. I'm actually going to start a binder and I'm going to print my project checklists and put them in the binder because it's really useful information. Okay, so here's this assess your skills before. And you'll see I've already answered mine, so I'm not going to do it again. But there are a number of different questions. I assess myself on a scale of 1 to 5, and I go through, and they're all really good questions. I'm confident, calm when I speak in front of groups. I understand the structure and basic structure of a speech. I'm aware of my strengths as a communicator and leader. I'm aware of where I need to improve my communication, listening, thinking, and speaking and leadership skills. And I have clear communication and leadership goals. I recognize how this project applies to my life outside of Toastmasters. And you'll see that this box now is gray. That means it's over. So I assess my skills before. Then, now this is really important. Every project clearly tells you what the competencies are that the project is trying to teach you. And I think for those of you who were present for your Pathways Guide presentation, you'll know that there are 5 core competencies within Toastmasters Pathways program, and that there's an assortment of those competencies sprinkled or peppered throughout each project. So when you chose your path, or when you choose your path, you will be focusing on what those core competencies are. And if you are really determined that public speaking is the competency that you want to improve upon, then you will choose a path where public speaking is one of the top core competencies. If you've chosen leadership or strategic leadership or interpersonal communication or confidence, any of those other core competencies, then your chosen path will focus primarily on those competencies. Every path has got a sprinkling of core competencies. And so this window, this screen, gives you a reinforcement that the project is focused on teaching you very specific competencies, and these are the ones. So you think about an icebreaker, you can see that this all makes complete sense. And I think that as a new Toastmaster, knowing this, knowing that part of this project is to teach me not just to get up in front of a group of people and talk, but it's also giving me some knowledge about the basic structure of a speech. It's about preparing but not sounding like a robot. And on the other hand, I've seen a lot of icebreakers that people have just winged it. Also, what it takes to actually demonstrate self-confidence when speaking in front of an audience, and to identify the communication and leadership skills that I am learning and what my goals are. So we look at this screen and we go ahead, and here's another one that is a photograph. This is a photograph. So clicking on this and trying to get somewhere on this is going to get you nothing. It's not even going to start the video, because what this screen is telling you, video navigation, review this screen to learn how to interact with videos. So for those of you who aren't technically savvy, it tells you what button to push to start and stop the video, what these numbers mean, how to make it full screen, how to move this bar along if you want to see the last part of the video again, etc. Okay, so this is a photograph. You need to use this button to move forward, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay. Now, I'm just going to stop that. You'll see that this now is a video about icebreakers, and it's we won't watch it right now. However, this video is the experience of a number of different Toastmasters giving their icebreaker. And they are interviewed and they talk very briefly about what the experience was like for them. You can imagine, as a brand new Toastmaster, wow, to have firsthand shared experiences, that's really meaningful. And I think that it also is a confidence booster. So again, information about the icebreaker. Now you can talk about you and your goals. You'll see that in this icebreaker speech outline worksheet, now we might get into trouble again here because this is another PDF, but okay, so I can remember doing my icebreaker. I knew nothing about the structure of a speech. I wasn't afraid to get up and speak to people, but I really had no polish. And this speech outline worksheet is just diamonds to somebody who is just learning and just starting out, so that they can answer some questions. They can fill this out as a fillable PDF, or they can print it out. And it actually explains how to put your speech together with the body, what your main points are, what your conclusion is, etc. We are going to see, fellow Toastmasters, some pretty polished icebreakers from this.
Nice.
Yes, I agree. Okay, now, if I try to get out of here, it's not going to let me.
Why is it?
Okay, yes, there we are. Okay, so that is, it's pretty much the same thing. One is a downloadable version. One is just the fillable PDF online to view it. This is really special stuff. This is a really good thing. So you will see this kind of a worksheet in some of the projects down the road, but not all of them. Okay, so now it tells you how to organize your speech, how to write it out, what to remember, how to connect with the audience, how to rehearse it. And again, now we have a slideshow. Okay, so you'll see there's a picture and there's information. And if we click next, we go to the next slide. And then we go to the next slide. And then the next slide and the next slide. And now we know that we're finished the slideshow because there are 5 slides in that show. And if we want now to go beyond prepare and present, we use this button. Okay, this next button only advances your slides. Okay, so while we're here, I think I'll show you this direction button. It says select each button to reveal more information. So you'll see every time you see a direction sign, there will be a little bit of information come up. And sometimes it's up there already by default and sometimes it's not. But there's useful information within this. And anytime you see a rectangle button, click on it because there's good stuff in there. You'll see that every time you click on it, the information changes. So there's lots of good information in there. Imagine doing your icebreaker and being told ahead of time about timing and pacing and organization and review and moment to moment. Okay, then you relax, you breathe, you enjoy it, how to overcome your anxiety. And after your speech, again, we have a slideshow, and this time there's 4 slides. And this time the information is superimposed upon the photograph. So there are your slides. Okay, we have another direction screen that tells you how to advance the slides. And then we have, this is not the assessment actually, this is interesting. This is about reflection. This is about sitting down, having a quiet moment, and just going over what you think you did really well and what you would have liked to have done differently in your speech. So there's built-in reflection time where you can just evaluate yourself. It's not formal, it's not recorded, it's just reflection. Then you can review the project. And then you can complete your assignment. You'll see the project checklist shows up all over again. It's the same one that you saw at the very beginning. The More button gives you more information. And then some information about assessing yourself. You will see also in your evaluation resource, which is the form used for your evaluator to evaluate this particular speech or this particular project. You can print your whole project, and the worksheet is available all over again. So when you need to pick out your evaluation form to give your evaluator, all you have to do is, again, go to Select, Move to another screen, go to your evaluation. This screen will come up, and there is your evaluation form. Okay, and that's true of every project. And now you'll see, because I've done this, the actual little assessment isn't going to come up, but you'll go through exactly the same quiz. And when you finish your little quiz again, you will see that you can compare the befores and afters. Now, I just saw a question that came up, and it said, can we repeat a project? We can repeat the work as many times as we want. Once a project is marked completed, though, you can't uncomplete it. So you can do the work for your own self-development, but it won't change your record. It won't change anything within Pathways. By all means, if you feel that you haven't done as good a job as you would have liked, and you look at your before and after assessment and you don't feel that you've grown, do it again. But you will always be marked complete. You'll see in here, it will always stay completed. But you can go back in, as I said, relaunch, just as I did. Even though I've completed my Icebreaker, we went through all of the instruction and the work all over again. You can do it as many times as you want.
That's one important note is you do have to complete 2 pathways to get your Distinguished Toastmaster status on the Pathways program. And if you belonged to more than one club before March 20th, you are eligible to register for a second pathway. You actually have to either email or phone Toastmasters International to get that set up for you.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you for adding that, Carol. And a note that if you belong to 3 clubs, you still only get 2 paths free. Mm-hmm. If you belong to a 3rd club, you have to pay the $20. Now, that brings me to a really good point. You talked about earlier, you and I talked about the fact that there are many people who are serving as area and division and district officers who haven't had time to delve into Pathways because they've been so busy doing, and club officers for that matter, doing their officer job. The need to serve as a club officer and a district officer is still part of the DTM. It's still valuable. It's still part of, you still get credit within Pathways for those jobs. It's still an important part of your learning experience and your leadership training. So don't sweat it if you are so busy with your officer job right now that you don't have as much time as you would like to commit to Pathways. That's also true in the legacy program, isn't it? It's no different. And you saw how much time it took to read through the material to complete a project. I don't think it takes any more time or less time than in the legacy program. I think you can sit down at your computer and you can look at the information, read the screens, go through the slideshows, go through the videos, and spend as much time on a project as you're able. And I don't think it's any different from what we're doing right now. Being an officer takes time, and I get it. Okay.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Okay, so now, Carol, have you been keeping track of some of the questions? Can we maybe go back? How do I unshare my screen now?
You just, there's the button. Yeah, there you go. And okay, so Jenna said, if I join a second club now, will I need to pay to get a second path? Yes, except if you are a sponsor of a brand new club between now and the middle of June, we are going to give you a free path. So that's one sneaky way to get one for free. And you start a new club, which is awesome. And you need that to get your distinguished Toastmaster status anyway. So if you've got a really great idea for a second club and you want to create it, this is the time to get busy on that now. The free path for sponsor is a D21 incentive. Yes, it is.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, one more quick thing that I wanted to let you know just around this level 1 is that when you try to when you log out, you must log out of Pathways and then log out of Toastmasters International. So this little icon up here is the little gear icon is how you log out. And then once you've logged out, it will take you to your home page, and you have to log out of Toastmasters International as well.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm just going to close some windows here. Okay, so now how do I get back to unsharing my screen?
Yeah, exactly what you're doing. There you go.
Okay.
All right. You could put your picture up and then we can see you.
Okay, I can do that.
Hi, Kristin.
Hey. Hello. Okay, are there any other questions that I can answer in the couple of minutes that we have left?
There aren't any in the Q&A, so if you can type them in the Q&A or you can type in the chat. I've been reading the chat. Any pressing questions that you have? Disabling your pop-up blocker, that seems to be an obstacle for some people. How easy is that, Kristin?
It's actually pretty easy. There is a tab right on, once you've logged into Pathways, there's a tab across the top that actually allows you to do that. It helps you when you click on that tab. There's a list of different browsers, and whether you're Apple or PC or whatever, and you just find the one that applies to you and click on it, and it gives you very specific instructions and sometimes even links to completely unblock your pop-up blocker. Say that fast 3 times. One thing that I did find on my iPad, you can't unblock pop-ups just for a site. You have to, it's either an on or off toggle switch. So if you are using an iPad, you go into your settings, you unblock your pop-ups, and you've unblocked them for everything. So when you finish your Pathways session, you can go back and just toggle that back on again.
We do have one question. Pat Nelson, it's up on the screen. It appears that people don't get notified if they are asked for feedback or sent a badge. Is that correct?
You don't get a bell or a ding or a beep or anything like that. Maybe in a future session, we can go and explore Basecamp, and you'll see that there is a place that you can go for storing your evaluations and getting and receiving feedback. One thing that I wanted to tell you is that if you remember, when I went into my curriculum and I opened my path, you remember those launch buttons? Well, as soon as you have completed your Icebreaker, and this is true of every project, but as soon as you have completed that project, that button goes from launch to evaluate. And it's really confusing because you think, what do you mean evaluate? I've already been evaluated. And Toastmasters International, in their wisdom, felt that you might want to give World Headquarters some feedback. And so once you've finished a project, that launch button turns to evaluate for 10 days. And if you press it, you can tell World Headquarters about your experience. After 10 days, it goes back to complete or launch again. So if you finish a project and then you see that launch button turn to evaluate, that's what that's about. I know.
So they should have used a different word.
they could have done a real better job on that one. Yes.
We can give them that evaluation. There you go.
I think that was like you had to have some kind of a secret key or code or something to figure that one out. But
okay. Jim Taylor said, what about an email notification of evaluation feedback on Pathways? And I just sent Jim a quick note that people email you the evaluation from your evaluator. You actually have to upload that to the site yourself. Is that correct, Kristin?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. And I recommend for now that you print out your evaluation form and take it with you when you're giving your speech, and have your evaluator write it out and then scan it and upload it. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that what I'm envisioning is that your evaluator says, I'm going to go home right after the meeting and I'll fill out your evaluation form. And then I'll send it to you. And then they go home and they're tired and they pour themselves a glass of wine and put their feet up and they totally forget to do it. Right. So I can kind of see that happening. So I think that the best for now is to print it out. You can email it to your evaluator, but I still, it was just like an introduction, I still print out my introduction and take it with me just in case the Toastmaster didn't get it or forgot it or anything else. So same with the evaluation. You can send it to them ahead of time. You can have a conversation with them ahead of time about your objectives, but take the printed form with you and have them write it out. Make sense?
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the time, and you had said that you had an announcement to share with us before the end of this.
Oh, yes. Okay. Very quickly. I have just found out from World Headquarters that a new path is about to be launched. It's nearly complete, and it is the humor path.
Nice.
Yes. There is an advanced leadership path in the works. And just as right now, mentoring is a mini course that you can take and get a badge just for that within Pathways. They are working right now, nearing completion, a mini course called Parliamentary Procedure.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yes. Oh, so you actually can take that and be awarded that badge, and you will have had a mini course that is probably going to be packed full of good information on parliamentary procedure. And then I also just found out that I think as of next week, the Pathways program is going to be available to the visually impaired.
Yes.
So they've actually created, I know, it's awesome.
That's
I think Toastmasters is humor.
When is that going to be available?
It says nearly complete.
Nearly. Oh.
Whatever that means.
All right. I'll throw that teaser to Funny Bone Toastmasters. They will be pleased.
Okay, good. You're the first to hear.
And Barb has Barb.
Do we have time?
2025. Okay. No, she just made a comment. There we go.
She's being sarcastic.
Yes. Thanks, Barb. Okay, and we are out of time. Thank you, Kristin, for these nuggets, for the nice methodical walk through. I feel confident that I can dive into Pathways now. I hope all of you feel confident as well if you have not yet gone in. And certainly for those who rushed through it, now you can help mentor those people who have not yet seized the opportunity, help alleviate their fear. This video is going to be available. Tell them to watch the video, and let's get everybody on Pathways.
Terrific.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to doing some more webinars as I learn about pathways and share my knowledge with all of you.